Don Krawiec is the recipient of the Special Achievement Award for the Montrose Sports and Community Hall of Fame Class of 2023 for his accomplishments during his long career in the Naval Nuclear Industry. Don is a 1974 graduate of Hill-McCoy High School. He grew up in a house near the corner of Francis and Seymour Roads and spent his early years playing in the woods and fields along Brent Creek and the Flint River. Some of his fondest memories were riding his bike back and forth to town to play Little League Baseball during the summer. His favorite summer job was the summer he worked for the Montrose Township Summer Recreation Program, alongside his future brother-in-law, Dwayne Cherry, lining Little League fields, umpiring baseball games, teaching kids to play t-ball, and chaperoning on the weekly bus trips to the Chesaning Pool. Don demonstrated his athleticism during all 4 years of high school by participating in football, wrestling, and track for Montrose. He served as co-captain of the football team during his senior year and led the team in scoring at running back, which earned him accolades for first team all-conference. His wrestling team finished second in the state his senior year and may have won the state title had it not been for a tragic auto accident on the way to a Saturday meet that claimed the life of his friend, Stuart Curry, and sidelined several other starters. In track, Don was a member of a group of sprinters that broke most of the Montrose school records for the short distances, including a 440-yard relay team that placed in the state final. Don personally set a new Montrose school record for the 100-yard dash. As a result of his contributions in 3 sports, Don was named Montrose's overall outstanding boy athlete his senior year. Don was equally involved in other aspects of high school, being active in the National Honor Society and served as president his senior year. He was a member of the publications class responsible for producing the yearbook and worked the sports beat, writing articles for the Rampage High School newspaper. Don was also selected to represent Montrose High at Michigan's Boys State, a week-long conference held at Michigan State University, where high school students from around the state came together to learn about government by forming a government, nominating candidates, holding a political convention, and electing officials. Don finished high school near the top of his class and was the top male academically. He also had the distinction of winning the American Legion School Award all 6 years of junior high and high school. That award was granted annually to 1 boy and 1 girl in each grade for their demonstration of leadership, scholarship, and service. His fellow classmates were spot on when they voted Don as most likely to succeed his senior year. After graduation, he shifted his focus entirely to academics when he decided to study engineering at Michigan Technological University in the frozen north of the Upper Peninsula. He picked tech not only for its great engineering programs and elaborate ice sculptures, but because it appealed to his sense of adventure. It seemed far away, and Don had never been there before. He worked his way through college, holding part-time jobs the entire time in school, and sometimes multiple jobs during the summers. Even then, he was looking for adventure. One of his most interesting summer jobs was working for the Civil Defense Emergency Management Organization in North Dakota, evaluating buildings for their possible use as fallout shelters. As part of that job, he got to tour military installations and got his first exposure to the defense industry and nuclear technology. Don graduated from Michigan Tech with high honors in the top 10% of his class. He had planned to go directly to graduate school, but was convinced by a recruiter from the Bettis Atomic Power Laboratory in Pittsburgh to start working and let Bettis put him through graduate school. It was an exciting time to join Bettis during a race to develop better technology for our Navy's ships at the height of the Cold War with the Soviets. Because the job required a government security clearance, the recruiter couldn't tell him much about the work, just that he would be serving the Navy and the nation. That made it seem all the more appealing to Don. Besides, he had never been to Pittsburgh. After moving to Pittsburgh and starting to work full-time, he continued his education attending graduate school at Carnegie Mellon University and completed a master's degree in mechanical engineering over the next several years. Don worked at the Naval Nuclear Laboratory for 43 years. The Naval Nuclear Laboratory comprises the U.S. Department of Energy locations and personnel responsible for developing advanced naval nuclear propulsion technology, providing technical support to ensure the safety and reliability of our nation's naval nuclear reactors, and training the sailors who operate those reactors in the U.S. Navy's submarines and aircraft carrier fleets. Their mission is dedicated solely to the support of the U.S. Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program. The Naval Nuclear Laboratory includes the Bettis Atomic Power Laboratory in Pittsburgh, the Knowles and Kesselring sites in New York, and the Naval Reactors Facility in Idaho, which have proudly supported the nation since 1946. The Naval Nuclear Laboratory has nearly 8,000 employees working at primary locations in Pennsylvania, New York, South Carolina, and Idaho. The Naval Nuclear Laboratory also has an established presence at numerous shipyards and vendor locations around the globe. Don's initial work at the Bettis Laboratory in Pittsburgh was in support of the operating fleet, providing technical support for new ship construction and the refueling of naval nuclear reactors in aircraft carriers and submarines. A little over a year out of college, he volunteered to take a field assignment working out of the Bettis field office in the shipyard in Newport News, Virginia, monitoring the refueling of a ballistic missile submarine. Because he was the youngest engineer there, he was assigned to the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. Late one night during a complex maintenance evolution, something went clunk. At that moment, he got a full appreciation for the responsibility and expectations the shipyard and Navy personnel had of a Bettis engineer when everyone in the room turned and looked at him. Over the next several years, his assignments included numerous trips to shipyards and naval bases around the country to work on problems involving submarines and aircraft carriers. The places he visited included Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in New Hampshire, Newport News Shipbuilding in Virginia, Puget Sound Naval Shipyard in Washington, and Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard in Hawaii, to mention a few. On one occasion, he was asked to travel to Australia to do testing on board the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise, as it was transiting through the Indian Ocean to the Philippines. A highlight from that trip was that he was observing the ship's flight tower when the crew celebrated 25 years of operation under nuclear power by spelling out E=mc², 25, on the flight deck while in their dress white uniforms. After several years in Pittsburgh, Don was looking for a new adventure and accepted a challenge to move 2,000 miles west and work at the Naval Reactors Facility in Idaho. At the time, the Naval Reactors Facility housed 3 operating prototype reactors that were used for the dual mission of testing new technology and training sailors. Later, Don became a trainer for the classes of sailors that followed. Among his students at the Nuclear Power Training Unit in Idaho were some of the senior officers that would be the next captains and executive officers of the Navy's aircraft carriers. After several years in Idaho, Don returned to Pittsburgh, where he met and married the love of his life, Mary Ellen. They have been married for over 36 years. Mary Ellen even got the opportunity to take a day cruise on board the aircraft carrier USS George Washington, where she stood on the flight deck and watched a fighter jet do touch-and-go landings. Over his career, Don rotated through various engineering and management positions, supporting ongoing operations, and worked on the development of new technologies for naval reactors. This sometimes involved working with researchers at universities, as well as scientists and engineers at other national laboratories. His work took him to several other Department of Energy sites, including Sandia National Laboratory in New Mexico, the Nevada Nuclear Test Site, and the Hanford Reservation in Washington State. As a result of his technical work, he received a number of company innovation awards and was awarded 2 patents. Highlights from those days ranged from adopting the latest simulation technology to training reactor plant operators to running scale model tests of new design concepts for nuclear spent fuel shipping systems. Over time, Don was promoted into more senior leadership positions and eventually decided to accept another challenge. This time, the adventure involved his family, when he moved Mary Ellen and his 4 small children from Pennsylvania to Idaho. There he was the engineering manager and eventually the plant manager at the expended core facility, the Naval Nuclear Laboratory's spent nuclear fuel processing complex at the Idaho National Laboratory site. As the plant manager, he managed over 400 engineers, scientists, technicians, and crafts personnel. After returning to Pittsburgh the second time, Don held a number of senior management and executive level positions, including leading a department responsible for the developing and deploying new naval operator training technologies, including control room simulators. He also served as the Chief Information Officer for the organization. As CIO, Don had overall responsibility for the central scientific computing systems, distributed computing operations, computer security, telecommunication systems, and data center operations for all of the Naval Nuclear Laboratory sites. During the final years of his career, Don ran the project management office, monitoring the work involved in the design and construction of a new billion-dollar naval spent fuel handling facility that would replace the one he previously worked at in Idaho. This work required frequent trips to Washington, D.C. to brief senior government officials and naval personnel. After 43 years of service, Don retired in 2021. This picture was given to him at retirement to acknowledge his accomplishments in years of service. The commemorative coins are awarded for each 5-year anniversary. The last one reads, 40 years of service supporting the world's best Navy. Don currently lives with his wife Mary Ellen in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. They have 1 son, Matthew, and 3 daughters, Kara, Catherine, and Leah. Since retirement, in addition to spending time with his grandchildren, Jonathan and Eileen, Don has been working on his golf game, was recently selected to be a member of the Parish Pastoral Council for his church, and offers his time to various other volunteer endeavors. Please help us welcome Don Krawiec into the 2023 Montrose Sports and Community Hall of Fame for the Special Achievement Award.